Before we get to the video, YouTube, in their infinite wisdom, have decided to demonetize this channel for some reason. So if you'd like us to continue producing these videos, and if you're enjoying them, please do follow the link in the description, go over to lotus.com, sign up for £5 a month, support us, so we can keep doing what we're doing. Thanks. Is Nigel Farage even right-wing? This is a question that many people have asked over the years. And as far as I can tell, it seems that Nigel Farage started off quite right-wing and has basically moved across to being basically a globalist, basically some sort of lib who is completely against actual right-wing politics. And so I find this very peculiar. For example, apparently Nigel Farage, when he was young and first in UKIP, he asked Enoch Powell to back him for an attempt to become an MP 20 years ago, and that was in 2014. And Enoch Powell had backed 3 others, and he had asked Enoch Powell to stand as an MP or a candidate for him. And Enoch Powell had refused. He had refused to back Nigel Farage. He backed 3 others, but not Nigel, for whatever reason. And in the Brexit campaign referendum, you may remember Nigel's breaking point poster, in which he showed the swarms of Syrian migrants, obviously mostly young, in fact, virtually all young men, travelling across Europe to get to Germany, France, and of course, eventually Britain. And Nigel seems to be wearing the coat of the right wing, saying, well, we don't want to take all of these people. Why would we want to take all of these people? These people can stay out or they can go home. And of course, this was reported for inciting hatred and things like this. Nothing ever came of it because it's a reasonable point to make, actually. Why would we want to take hundreds of thousands of foreign men into our country? What's the appeal? Why would we want to do that? Especially when they're in safe countries as they're being photographed travelling here. And so it's a weird thing that when he was interviewed by Stephen Edgington, he said, well, no, mass deportations aren't my ambition. So on one hand, Nigel will say, he will criticise Keir Starmer daily. Like, well, Keir Starmer hasn't stopped the boats. He's not stopping the boats. He's letting hundreds of thousands of foreign men to illegally break into the country and set up residence here. In fact, at taxpayer expense, in hotels, we're paying for all of this. And yet, he doesn't seem to want to get rid of them. Why would we not want to get rid of them? And in this clip, I won't play it just for time's sake, but in this clip, he says, well, you know, people come and go, as if the concept of deporting illegal immigrants, which is a completely sensible and normal, rules-based perspective, one that Keir Starmer himself probably would be able to sign off on, is somehow conflated with just forbidding people to come into the country entirely, which is very weird, because I don't think anyone's said that. I don't think anyone's ever said, or at least, no one I've ever heard has ever said, you know what we have to do, Nigel, is get rid of every single person in the country who can't trace their ancestry to Cheddar Man and prevent anyone else from ever coming into the country. I don't think, that he seems to like completely conflate these. It's like, no, Nigel, there are 200,000 fighting age men who I'm paying for at the moment to sit in a hotel. Can we get rid of them? And he's like, well, mass deportations aren't my ambition. So, okay. All right. So you don't want them coming in the country, but once they're here, you're never going to do anything about it, even though they're here illegally. Okay, that's very peculiar, isn't it? And it was very peculiar because Rupert Lowe was is a very firm voice on this. He said, no, I want all of these men deported. This will amount to a mass deportation of the illegal immigrants that are here. Now, the 200,000 we're putting up in the hotels is only a drop in the bucket, of course, because we have at least 1 million other illegal immigrants just hanging around in the country. And to be honest with you, I think that number is going to be undercalculated by a factor of like 2 or 3. So we are looking at millions and millions of people who are a net negative to the economy, who are a drain on society and our own resources, and who are also endangering us because we don't know anything about these people. We don't know if they've got criminal records. We don't know the kind of people that they are. We've done nothing to vet them because they're not here with our say-so. And so it makes sense. It seems to be the responsible thing to do. So no, we're just going to grab them, get rid of them, send them home, back to where they came from. They come from countries. It's good that they go back to them. That's perfectly normal. But Nigel Farage seems to be against this, as I say, which is very peculiar when you look at his history of like being right-wing and anti-immigration and then suddenly softening. And when Rupert Lowe adopts the position that surely Nigel Farage held when he was asking Enoch Powell for the endorsement. He's like, no. And so recently he was on a Bloomberg interview where the reporters say, well, you're anti-immigration. And he says, no, well, I never said I'm anti-immigration. I'm for controlled immigration so that we can make sure that the system continues to run properly, as if that's the reason, right? It's bureaucratic. Oh, well, I don't like the fact that these guys have broken in across the channel, but if they would just come via a plane and then wander off into Britain, that would be okay, because at least that wouldn't be going outside of like the normal transit routes or something. Is that the problem with illegal immigration, is it? Like that's very, very soft. That's the sort of thing that literally that's Keir Starmer's position on illegal immigration. He's happy to have as much immigration as anything, apparently. That net zero immigration means hundreds of thousands of people in every year, right? That's what he's arguing for with net zero immigration. Because remember, at the moment, we're running a massive deficit because about 600,000 to 800,000 people a year leave this country, but we let in 1.5 million, something like that, 1.2, 1.1 million. Like it's really, really high. And so we end up, I mean, God only knows how high this is, because under the Conservatives, it went up to net 900,000. And so to net zero, okay, I mean, don't get me wrong, it would be an improvement from where we are, but it doesn't solve any of the problems. And it implicitly concedes that everyone who the Labour and Conservative governments have allowed to come and stay here for some reason just get to stay here indefinitely, and this is just the way it is. So we live in this overpopulated country forever, and we just, use anything in this country. It's the sheer number of people who are not paying into the system but are withdrawing from it that is causing the system to collapse. And for some reason, Nigel Farage doesn't have a problem with this, and he in fact gets offended when you say that he's anti-migration. It's like, yeah, no, it makes sense if you have something that's currently being destroyed by migration to say, yeah, no, I'm against further migration. We've had 25 plus years of unchecked migration. About 25 million people have been allowed to come here, and about 15 million of them have stayed so far. So I think that whatever the issue that migration was designed to solve is, if we haven't solved it with the numbers we've taken, I don't think we should take any more, just because look at the damage it's doing to the country. The country is unbelievably run down. But anyway, then you get strange people around him, like Nick Candy is his chairman, who apparently said, I cherish the values we grew up with here in the West, but today you're more likely to find them in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So what, extreme Thatcherism? Is that Western values? Like they're capitalist states, but they're also Sharia states. So when you say values, you're really kind of thinking economically, right? You're not thinking about the way that they treat women or homosexuals or like public drinking and things, or just drinking generally, and things like that, right? Nigel down the pub with a pint. They're not thinking the the Arabic view, the Islamic view on alcohol, right? Surely. And then you've got like Zia Youssef, who was known as a left-wing Muslim student at university. The thing is, I'm less persuaded by this sort of thing because, yeah, I mean, a lot of people were left-wing when they're young and they can change. But even then, Zia Youssef is just very sort of civic nationalist, right? It's like, oh, well, as long as you've got the passport, then that's fine. And so if the Labour and Conservative governments stamp 1 million passports, well, then that's 1 million people just like us, and we've got nothing to complain about, right? So this is very weird. And so people have been noticing that, hang on a second, is Nigel Farage even right-wing? Like, what does he even want? Like, what's he even saying that would be outside of the sort of Tony Blair consensus? Like, what's he saying that Tony Blair wouldn't sign off on? But, anyway, very, very peculiar state of affairs. And one that has been pushed to the fore at the moment because Rupert Lowe appears to be saying the things that reform ought to be saying, and he got canned from the party for doing so.